All right, welcome to the Digital Skill Podcast. So, my name is Bradley Taylor. I'm back here with Adam and Max, who are fresh off their vacations. And today we're going to be talking about Cursor. Cursor is a development application very similar to VS Code that's really just been a game changer in how we ship code. We also talk about the differences in the AI responses. So, we use a tool called lmsys.org, where we kind of see the leaderboard on what different responses are that people are voting for in being the best between like ChatGPT, Claude, and a bunch of other models. And it's pretty surprising to see who's at the top. We also have a really good discussion about the IP and a new company called, a new protocol, I should say, on the blockchain called Story.Foundation. It's the Story protocol, where they're trying to take IP and put it on the blockchain so that any derivative work based off or using generative AI can then have that monetary value go back to the original IP holders. We also talk about the state of AI and in particular in the enterprise and how that has been being rolled out across different enterprises. And there's some interesting use cases. There's some interesting data that we're going to go over from a report done by Deloitte. So let's get started. So, welcome back, guys, from vacation. Did you guys have fun?
Yeah, absolutely. I was down in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, with the family. So a lot of swimming, volleyball on the beach, volleyball in the water. Not enough sunscreen. So it was a good time. You guys should check it out sometime.
Down in Mexico.
Yeah. I know Max went to a World of Fun.
All of that. I went to Disney and Universal for my first time. It was pretty cool, actually. Got to see a lot of the new attractions they have. There's this really cool one for there's the Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, it was the first one we landed on. Like, it was the first time going to any attraction, even. And you kind of got like those passes that allow you to go faster. But we were like the first on the line, like when it just opened. And the girl at the door was like, "Oh, you're coming for that fast pass?" Like, yeah, like we were the only ones, almost the only ones in there, so we didn't need that. But it was an amazing experience. Only I wish that girl would have told us, like, save that for later. Gonna need it.
Because you can only use it so many times?
Yes, for that particular one, there's certain attractions you only get it once. And after a certain hour, you only get in if you have one.
Really?
Yeah, I know it's like that in Disneyland for one of the rides. We were always too late to get it. It was a Cars attraction or something like that a few years ago. Yeah, you had to like sign up, and it was like almost immediately booking for like 5 p.m. at like 10 in the morning or whatever time. So,
wow.
Yeah,
Definitely.
definitely.
A minute.
It was quite the challenge. But of course, I just ChatGPT'd it, like, give me a routine I can do for optimizing my day, which attractions to go to, what times to reserve for, order them by like how fun I will have, how much fun. It was great, actually.
How did it work out with that? Did it actually give you a good like agenda and like what you should do and how to navigate your day?
Yeah, totally. Like I prompted it to give me, basically wanted to have like the most exciting ones. There's a word for it, but yeah, basically like give me a rush. I don't care about its stuff, so it gave me a ranking. It gave me why one was more like exciting than the other one, and then just plan out the day, including like wait times. When should I go to break for food? How much time it should take. It was pretty spot on, actually. It was. Basically, I just followed that plan.
Nice. AI is running every day. So which do you like better, Disney or Universal? Or were there other parks there?
I did only those two. We got to 3 parks on each. I personally like Universal more. I'm a big fan of Harry Potter. Just so being all over that place was like a dream come true. So If I need it and my code is not working, I just like I go like ChatGPT, and it works.
Does that light up or anything?
Well,
Is
Does
that?
your wand light up? Light up?
Oh no, no, it's
hey,
the one. They're interactive ones. Like if you go to the windows at the park, you can
Ah,
do magic and stuff.
well, it's getting towards the end of August. Vacations are getting done. Fortunately, not going to Burning Man this year. I think last year took too much out of me with it raining and everything. But it's time to get back to work. And it's funny you say like, "Oh, Harry Potter magic," because one of the tools that we've been using recently has been Cursor, which is kind of like Harry Potter magic for our code. So, for those who don't know, Cursor is a pretty much, I would call it a VS Code clone, where it will literally it was probably one of the simplest things to set up where I downloaded Cursor. It took all of my VS Code settings, but one of the coolest things is it is just like Copilot on steroids. It allows me to use Claude 3.5, which is a huge unlock, unlike Copilot, which I don't think you can actually control what models there. We actually just canceled Copilot because Cursor has been just a complete game changer for our productivity. But it does code generation, multi-line edits. It has its own little chat window. Um, you can actually reference your code by just saying at this file, which is a huge tool that I use. So when you're on specific files, you just add the different either folder or the specific files um, inside of there. And also too, if you have documentation with inside of your code base, you can set up what that documentation is. So as you're creating the docs, as you're creating new docs, it can take not only the context of your documentation, but the context of your code, which coupled with Claude 3.5 is just like, mwah. You're talking one shot prompts on there. I mean, Max, I mean, you've been using this, probably more than anyone on our team. Yeah, tell me a little bit about, your experience doing it and some of the tips and tricks that you've been kind of showing us internally.
Yeah, so fell in love with Cursor right away. Funny you say it's a kind of a clone. It is a fork, of VS Code. That's why it's able to do so much shared with it. Um, yeah, just overall, like it's great. Let me share my screen here. You can do so many things. A lot of the things you can actually do directly in ChatGPT or Claude, like you can do it here. You have your normal chat view. You can change between different models. You can try models even when they're not fully supported. You can go and enter your own custom one. I think this would even enable you if you want to use a fine-tuned model. But the chat here, like you were mentioning, it's amazing. You can just pull up anything you want. Um, I have some of my custom docs that you can index very quickly. Add a new doc, put a URL in there, then that's in your project. Yeah, and
You're talking about
the chat
URL to
functionality.
documentation. You're talking about URLs to documentation on the web. Like, so here's the API documentation, put that in there.
Yeah, for example, when we started on the Answer AI project and looking into Flowise, really there's no models that know about it, right? Like, so I just add Flowise, it's going to ask you for the URL, and then it has all those links that are coming from the Flowise documentation, and I can just ask about it. What is this project
I
about?
didn't know that it actually pulled up the links. Are those ones you've actually been to before?
No, this is just let's try a
Sages.
new one. For example, let's say I was looking at this library before for authentication. It's called Castle. Don't know too much about it yet, but I can copy. Let's just go with up. I can do new docs. Add a new doc in here. Just paste the GitHub page. Enter. It's gonna do some parsing. It's gonna be like Castle. hit that confirm button. It's going to go and index all of these for me. So now I can
That's
reference
awesome.
that right away and say I'm working on this check ownership function that I was implementing and say like, can I use some of this? And now it's gonna,
Have you seen
do the context of my project, of course, but now using that.
Have you seen it use those docs in reference without you actually having to reference it? So because in your doc library, if you asked a question that you knew was in there, like have you seen it like use it in the scope?
I haven't seen that. I know there's more options in there, so you can change like default modes, use context more often. No, I haven't seen automatically use it like that. You
Yeah,
can, of course, use the web as well.
you can just put the URL directly.
I was just saying, you can put the URL directly in there, yes. But for example, the web is something you can add reference, and that is something that you can enable somewhere in here to always use the web. Somewhere in here you can say like,
What's a
always check the web.
Got it. So I saw in there you put in all the different API documentation and everything in those settings so that it's kind of there for quick use. You're showing me also this compose feature, which was like it literally looked like some Harry Potter magic. I mean, stuff going on, like where you just have the file and it was just like do, like, and it's a new feature that they recently rolled out that you kind of have to activate. Where's that at?
Yeah, I think now it's enabled by default. You can use it at any point as long as you make sure you have a shortcut for it. In Mac, I think it's Command K. I'm on Windows, so for example, I was working on this check ownership. I can consider that one done and start using it on my file. So I can come in here, hit the command, and this little thing will show up. And here I can put any type of instructions. In my case, I'm just going to be like implement, and I can add that file that I just created so it knows exactly what I want it to implement. Let's say on these routes, then choose and edit. It's going to line by line think what it needs to update in every single one, and then show me kind of something that looks like a Git patch. And if I like that, I can just hit accept, made all my changes. Of course, it says something
That's
about
amazing.
no ownership, no things, something. But then again, I could go in, right? Like fix the issues, see what it
Right.
comes up with.
Yeah. I mean, it's not meant to replace you. We still are needed, but I mean, just even the copy and paste, saving that there. And I know too, Adam, you and I were using it. One of the things that this has really unlocked was, we were developing a UI for one of our apps that we were creating, and it gave us the ability to just let's try it this way. Let's try it with tabs. Let's try it with step function. Let's try it with this way, and it just we were literally talking with it, and it was just outputting because it had the context of the code, it had the context of the material UI library. I mean, this is going to really kind of just change how we just develop user interfaces, how we can iterate on these different things, because we all know when we actually see it in life, we're like, maybe that's not how we want to have it.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Like the about this is like if you are using like ChatGPT or something, like you have to upload these documents or like cut and paste, But when you're talking about the context of like an entire app, or large mono repo or whatever, like you want it to get to the point, when you say, okay, here's my question on this file. Cursor does a great job of like, okay, but I need you to use the context of like the entire repo or whatever, or you can do a subset like Max was showing of a specific folder or document, things like that. But that context is super helpful for it, so it doesn't just like answer the question, you know. And when you do that, it'll still only answer your question, but I found that does a really good job of actually giving you other recommendations as well. It's like almost like, hey, I'm fixing this here. You also want to check it over there. So I have a project that's quite daunting to kind of get into for years because it's like not a high priority, but it's like a massive upgrade from like Webpack 3 to 5 and PHP like 7 to whatever they're on now. And I was like, I don't know, like this is a tough one to like tackle, because like everything is super outdated. I was like, all right, I'm gonna give it a shot with using Cursor to see how far it can get me. So next thing you know, it's like got me on like ESLint 9 and like all the Webpack configs are updated. And there's like kind of like sub configs that get pulled in depending on environment. And so even when I asked about like the one Webpack config, like it actually like also gave me what I needed to change in those other files, even though I didn't specifically ask for that. And like it went and double checked it, which is huge because if you just think about it from like a human's perspective, if you ask a dev to like, hey, go update the Webpack config file, a lot of devs are very literal. Go to that file and update it. Don't look at anything else. Don't look to see if there's other ones or to see if there was like tests involved or whatever it might be. A good dev, like in my opinion, will like go and like double check and see if there's anything else that might have been missed or ask questions. But this has done like a great job of that. Now is it always right about things? Like no, but that's like it's not Cursor doing that. But the amount of work it allowed me to do in a few hours, that was probably estimated more like weeks, is like mind blowing. And I wouldn't be able to do that just with like any of the UIs that I've seen today, like the ChatGPT or Claude or anything directly through their UIs. It's just not really built for that. But Cursor's done a great job of it. So.
Yeah. One of the things that I loved about it was I actually went through and I wanted to create a new feature and I wanted to talk about the UI. So I just pulled out my laptop, hit record on, QuickTime, and just like, hey, when I go here, I want it to do this. When I click on this, I want it to do that. I want it to kind of look side by side, or I kind of like explained what I wanted it to do. Took that transcript, put it into Whisper, got the transcript back, and then put that into my first prompt and had it chat with the code base. And it gave me a step-by-step instruction of every single file that it was going to. It was like, do you want to start now? Yes. And I just like one by one, each of those steps, it went through and just helped me to just code it. And I mean, we're so close to just having it be, I want the web to do that, or I want my app to do this. It just does it.
Oh, it's
especially on like the user UX piece.
well. There's what's the feature called, Max? I wasn't able to get it running on my MacBook. What's that other like? I don't know if it's still in beta option. Basically, so it creates. If you can find the name, but like it basically will create a Python script. So it'll like you're giving it in Python Jupyter, giving it access to like create files. So you can say, hey, I need to create a new component, and I need to have tests for it, and I need to have a README, let's say, like, and you give it all your requirements, and it'll basically create the Python script, and it loops through, and like will actually create those files for you. So like there's like that multi-step piece, like can like get you however far it's going to get you, I guess, based on your prompt. But pretty big game changer if this works. Like one of the big things Max and I geek out about outside of the podcast is like finding a way to kind of document the coding best practices, and like if you just gave me a repo, like can I come up with a prompt that's going to be able to go through the code and come up with like what the coding best practices are, not just like the linting stuff, but like what's the style of it, whatever it might be, so that can become like a document, like Max was showing, that can be used for this other piece. So it's like, create me a new component that does this, and here's the document. It will use all those best practices, and in an ideal world, it's going to spit it out, not just as a solution, but a solution that fits with the rest of your files. So it's there. Like, whether it's 100% or not, I'm not sure, but like I can tell you, it's going to save 75%, I would guess, of people's time, especially and probably more if
It's
they have no idea about the repo at all.
Yeah.
yeah. I was just trying this one because I tested it like right before you were talking about it, and of course, when you go to show it, it doesn't. It does have some limitations, it seems, but the ideas are there, right? Like, um, finding all the context, it's amazing at, we know how hard that problem is. They say something like they have like there are 20,000 code bases index so far, and they're expecting it to grow like 10x by the end of the year. So the way that they are able to find things through files, now you're adding the ability to actually create new files, multiple files, and it's definitely going to change. It has changed how I work, as far as that I don't use this only for coding anymore. I went as far as like, okay, as long as I have something inside of my cursor in a text file, I can interact with it. I can save my memories. Every day I do journaling and I put it into a document. And then I want to ask like my week what things I missed, what could I have done better? I don't know. It just opens up another way of interacting with your computer. Yeah. Particularly in a text way.
Yeah.
That's an interesting use case too. It's not just even with the code. I think that's really cool. I think, I mean, kudos to the whole team, and the industry is actually seeing that too. And yesterday they just announced that they raised $60 million to continue this. So if you're an engineer and you've kind of been, you didn't like what Copilot's put, ChatGPT, you don't like copying and pasting that code back and forth. It doesn't have context about your code. Highly, highly recommend trying out Cursor. It'll be a complete game changer for your team.
Can we show one more thing that's kind of interesting? I just, if you guys check your
Yeah.
Slack, I just sent a screenshot of something. Um, so it was actually having issues at this point, probably because I was just hitting it too hard or something. But I'm pretty sure some of the kind of like background, um, like prompts or like steps showed up. I don't know if somebody can share their screen.
I'm trying to. So on this?
Yeah, zoom in a little bit because it's a little blurry on my end. So like, I basically pasted in this like error message in the ESLint during that update. Right, so you can see it's like ESLint config file, current file, but it printed out these like thoughts here, which is kind of really interesting. Like, if you scroll down, you'll just kind of see like what it's doing.
So it kind of shows its thought process, why it's asking or why it's recommending this. Like, hey, I'm thinking about this problem.
Yeah, but this doesn't usually show up, or it shows up and it goes away. Like, I've only seen it a couple times, but it doesn't like.
This is the fix my bug mode.
Yeah.
And you can use this either in the terminal or you can use it in here. This would
Yeah.
work more like an agent. Right?
Yeah. So it's interesting though. It's like this is what I'm gonna do, but then it got itself into a loop somewhere along the line. So this aired out, so I took a screenshot of it just to see it. But I thought to me this is like super interesting stuff because like it's coming up with these like sub prompts agents of like, okay, what is the steps I need to do to fix this? Just like a human would. It's not like going out searching the internet, being like, oh, here's a Stack Overflow post. Like, it's taking in all this information and like, okay, now I'm going to break it down to get to the right spot. And I think might be a good segue for some things, but this is what I consider better. Like, what's going to, in the end, going to be better. It's not like how it processes, what it gets back, and truly understands what was asked of it. And this is what I don't think people that aren't as technical quite understand about AI. Like, it's not a search engine. It's not just like taking this and like summarizing it and giving it to you. Like, the better it gets, the more like logical it'll kind of get about the purpose, intents, like all of those things without a user kind of mentioning it. And I think Cursor itself is like the things they're even doing before it even sends it off. They're being really smart about it to like find the right files or categorize your requests, things like that. So
Yeah, I mean, said foresight again, context is now king. Context about your whatever you're doing, like about you. I mean, every little piece of detail is definitely necessary. I think one of the things too, when you talk about what's better, because that has been one of the biggest betters in the eye of the beholder, so to speak, of like what people are looking for. One of the things that I think has been interesting to see is there is a tool called LM Sys. You can get to it at lmsys.org, where essentially you can go in and you give it a prompt. So like, write the game Snake in JavaScript, so it runs in uh, uh, I don't know, a web browser. And what this will do is it actually gives you two different responses, and you don't know uh, which AI model is which. A lot of AI models have actually been like OpenAI when they first had 4.0, were kind of released they always do it under like code names. I think Grok 2, which we'll talk about here in a minute, was released under like Sus R1 or something like that. But basically, you can go in here, you see what the output is, you could try them, but it doesn't tell you which model it is until you've actually voted for it. So, for instance, here I can say here A is better, B is better, it's a tie, or just both is bad. Um, I don't know. We could go in, we could actually create this and see which one actually works, which one doesn't. But I mean, just in this, you can see the two different styles. So, for instance, this one's using Canvas. This one's using Canvas as well. Uh, it kind of went over the CSS styling. So this actually broke it up into two different ones, where I think this one put the styling in line with it. So this one created it as one file, whereas this one broke it up into different files. But this is a great example of which is better, right? Do you want it broken up into different files? Do you want it to be in one file? I think that's the piece that's kind of the eye of the beholder. So I mean, which would you guys say is like the better one? Oh, this one gives an explanation. This one gives an explanation too. This
I
one
want to
kind of
play
it's.
guess the model.
You want to play guess the model?
Yeah, can we see which model it is?
After we vote, we can. We'll see which one it is.
Yeah, I say Anthropic is on the left.
Anthropic's on the left,
Yeah,
and what
that's
do you think's on
Claude.
the right? You think that's Claude?
Yeah, because it's trying to make it like auto executable, like it can run. You can just copy that
Oh,
and
like
make
an
it run in a browser.
artifact?
An artifact, yeah.
Uh, what's interesting is that the one on the right, it broke it down into separate files, but the explanation, oh, I guess no, it did that, but this one broke down the JavaScript logic and the different variables. So I'm going to say A is better. I like this a little bit better. I could actually go and run this in one browser. I don't have to set up multiple files. So I'm going to choose A.
I think B is better too.
Ah! ChatGPT 4.0 on the left, and actually Grok 2 Mini was on the right.
Yeah, so this
But
kind
one
of
of the
goes.
things that,
I was gonna say this kind of
go
goes
ahead, Adam.
back to like what I was saying earlier about like the coding best practices. If you were like for this particular use case of like the question you asked, like if that was part of its like memory or documents and artifacts, whatever people are calling them, like it would this question that we're looking at mostly of like do we want it in different files or not would already be answered, and the approach that it would take to solving, or like giving you an answer would probably be even better than this, my opinion. Um, because they're making
Yeah, that's where the
assumptions.
context.
Yeah.
Yep. But one of the cool things about this is then you can go on here and it sees the leaderboard. So, this is kind of, where it's, obviously I don't think, your non-technical users are actually even know this exists. But you can kind of see from the different votes and the different leaderboards. What was really surprising me is how high Gemini is. I've never really used Gemini after everything that's kind of happened with like Google. I've just kind of like written it off. But in terms of, well, first, it has the largest context window. And second, I was really surprised to see how well Gemini ranks on a lot of these different leaderboards. And also, too, how high Grok is coming up there. That was a very interesting piece, too, even above GPT-4 and 4.0 Mini. And then how far below Claude 3.5 Sonnet is. Because honestly, like, especially with coding, I mean, I remember when I ran out of Anthropic tokens with Claude 3.5 and I had to go back to 4.0, I was like, this is like sucks.
Does it let you see?
But
Does it let you see like past ones by any chance that other people voted on? Like, I'm kind of curious. Like,
uh,
I mean, there's a lot of them, but like,
oh, like
like
past
oh,
responses.
yeah, I want to see what somebody else did and see if I agree with it or not. Because I'm really curious if like one like the categories that these are in, like what the prompt was that somebody asked, um, and kind of see I don't know if see if I agree with it. Some like you said, like you're like, oh, I want it all in one file because it's easier to test. Like totally fair point and definitely easier to test. But if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
looking at the
Oh,
test,
coding.
I want it this other way.
Good Gemini 1.5, like coding 4, like way beyond any of the other two.
I'm assuming that higher is better here, maybe?
I think that's the rank.
That was my assumption as well.
It says sort by rank, sort by arena
Oh, it's
score.
the rank. It's the rank. Yep. Yeah, yep. So ChatGPT 4.0, best of them all.
Oh, coding it's last. So that's not
Okay,
that's
okay.
not that great. Yeah. So
No.
4.0 latest is the best for coding. It's interesting that you have this kind of. It definitely has by language too, which ChatGPT is there. Gemini's still up there on that piece. Wow, Anthropic's really far down on language. Um, One other thing that was interesting was uh, this was it side by side, but there's where you could see like a heat map of the different. I forget where it was, but you could actually see where they kind of ranked against each other, like when this one was pitted against this one, and what that map was. I just had it on
Oh,
there,
I
but
just
yeah,
had a
it's a
great
pretty
idea.
cool website.
All right,
What is
this
it?
is what we get. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna come up with these prompts.
It'll just between us.
Okay, we're gonna come up with some like prompts like the snake game thing. We're gonna throw it through like ChatGPT 4.0, and then we're gonna have all the other ones. So we'll do it. We'll basically have it do it however many models we choose. ChatGPT, I want you to create me the snake game. Here's the prompt, and then do that. For, let's say for 5 or 4 other models. Don't give them that prompt. Instead, tell them to code review the code that's there and give feedback back to ChatGPT, and just go until like it gets to a certain place, and then see how many times it takes somebody to get like the best code, but have them do it to each other.
So kind of have it recursively go like, hey, this is the model that created it, and this is the reviewer, and how many times did it take for either A for a one-shot prompt, or B how many times did it take this model to correct the other model's prompt, the other model's code?
yeah, I mean, you could look at it either way, I guess. But if you keep it simple, but if it's just like, hey, like I need you to console log, uh, hello world prince or something, hello world out, and maybe something's just like, oh, here's console log, and PR review is like, this isn't gonna run because it's like not in like an HTML page or whatever, and it's like, oh, okay, I'll put in an HTML page, like, oh, you forgot your script tags, whatever it is, like see where it gets to, but have them like help each other out. I mean, I don't know. It might just be fun to watch it happen, to see who actually picks up on like the meaning behind what they're trying to do quicker. Uh, I don't know. It'd be
Well, it's
fairly
a
easy.
good
No,
test
this is
because
fun.
I mean, some models are great at creating something new, and some are better at like reviewing what's already there and seeing that. But I think that would be an interesting test to run on that. But this is a fun if you're into data like visualization, if you're into kind of just kind of seeing how these different models rank. Um, it's it's pretty it's a pretty cool website. So it's arena.lmsys.org, and you can kind of go and play around with it. All right. So the next thing, so we talked a little bit about Grok and Grok 2. And one of the things that has been a big piece of controversy and has been that it's just completely uncensored and copyright. So, for instance, if I want a create and really it's image creation tool, you can ask it, and I'm not going to do it here, but you can kind of you can pretty much ask it anything, and it will give you you know instructions on how to make illegal things, do things that other chatbots won't. And this kind of goes into Elon's whole philosophy where you shouldn't tell an AI like don't do this because of your own morals, like always going for truth. But one of the things that's been interesting is that it's uses a new new chatbot. I'll show that here in Grok, but it uses a new image generation called Luma, in which I can go here and I'm like, create an image of Mickey Mouse and Deadpool walking away from a car explosion. Now, if I ask this in any other AI tool, any other AI image creation, it's going to say, especially with Mickey Mouse, no. But boom, there we go. Trademarked images, uh, you know, walking, Mickey Mouse and Deadpool walking away. And this really brings up a very interesting conversation around IP and copyright and what is the future of IP and copyright in this new age of AI?
I mean, I know we've talked in the past a bit about using like blockchain and other methods in order to kind of like tag and have a record of like these like uh, uniquely created works. Even if they're in the past, so that like things can be tracked as to like when they're used or referenced, potentially things like that. Um, and I've been reading like pretty regularly somebody's getting sued or like complaining about their works being stolen. More so now, it seems more about written work than it is like, I'm sure visual work is even worse, but I'm hearing more about like, oh, like they stole like a chapter of my book, or like things like that, or a song or whatever it is. Um, so like we definitely needs to be in check, you know. Uh, and I think it's just, everything is so out in the face of people right now, like with everything that's getting out there, and so many people can find it. It's almost like when the internet came around, and like it's like all this information thrown at them. So I don't know how to protect it other than like what we've talked about with those things, which we can talk about more. But it it's no different than somebody being able to do it today. I could just go read a book, put it into my essay, or like put put it on my into my book and just act like it's my own. But now it's automated, so it could happen in milliseconds.
all the time.
Yeah.
And you will still
Yeah,
get, if you go out and write that and like kind of polish it under your own name, you will get plagiarized. You know, that doesn't happen
well,
with this stuff.
well, and that's the whole is the whole argument is it a derivative work? And actually, so a lawsuit actually just got um, sent back saying they are derivative pieces of work. I mean, we've been talking about this since Adam and I used to be DJs before being a DJ was cool. Like we both, like you're taking other people's artwork, their music, and then putting it together to create your own music. Yeah, now DJs are the new rock stars of the world, and there's still that debate: is that new art? Is that derivative art? How do you actually give credit back to the original um, creators of that? And also, too, one of my biggest is complaints and critiques of the whole industry is when you have people like Sam Altman talking about like, hey, it's impossible to make these models without using copyrighted work. Like they say they have to use this. So it's it's an ethical debate because you're right. I can go and I can read all of Harry Potter and then I can go create some derivative work. I mean, there's so many, Reddit threads on how, Star Wars is just really a rehash of of I forget what it is, but like how each story is just a rehash of each other because they all follow the same formula, they all follow the same kind of plot lines. Um, but at one point, does it when you just start making it industrial scale, does it now create it so people don't want to even do people are people going to want to not create new art because of it?
No, I think they're going to create new art still. I, they just won't know how to protect it as much because this was just totally unexpected. Um, but I think like I'm not a lawyer. Would say that a lot, but I think like the easy test for like copyrighted things is like if somebody saw this, would they would they assume that it is like by that artist or the same as that artist because it's so similar? Like Vanilla Ice back in the day, it's like tin 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 versus like tin 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 tin. It's like one like half measure up or whatever. Um, so Mickey Mouse, it's like, well, it's not Mickey Mouse. It kind of looks like a burnt Mickey Mouse, but it still kind of looks like Mickey Mouse. And so, yeah, you could get sued for that. Which is why I think ChatGPT and then OpenAI are just like, okay, just don't let them do it at all, because like they know that that is a clear violation, and something's going to happen. So I don't know, like
Yeah,
derivative is one thing, but like quoting somebody, like you need to give attribution to them. Like it's really what it comes down to.
yeah. I think that is the
Really,
biggest thing because I mean,
attribution.
What's that?
go back.
I really think that attribution is the key part here. And I think when we look back on books and people that are writers, they always have like this book came from my inspiration reading this novel and that other novel that carried me over, or like they have that information in there. And there's also something very strong about the effort. I think we've always put as a society a lot of value in how hard it is for you to come up with a book. Right? Like it's not just something you put a prompt in there and then bloop, comes out, right? But where is the value on the ideas or on the effort? But because you still made up that prompt, you still wanted to put Mickey next to Deadpool. That's you. If somebody fancies that and now you get a fandom out of it, that was your idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you have to give attribution. I mean, I had a whole startup called Beats Me, that tried to give attribution to electronic music artists, based off of what the DJ was playing to kind of, what is to kind of because everyone was like, "Oh, the DJ's playing this." I remember back when Adam, you're playing like Alice DJ, and people were like, "I heard you on the radio." It's like that's not my
Yeah. My singing
That's not my track.
my singing voice is much different than that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, but
You made
I
it
think,
popular.
right. And that's the thing is like, because, I remember when Napster first came out, they're like, oh, this is going to kill the music industry. And when you think of the centralization that the music industry had prior to Napster, prior to, um, the internet, they were kingmakers. They said, you're going to be famous. You're going to be famous. We're going to give you radio time. Whereas now the distribution, and I mean, we found out very quickly. We put our mixes on Napster. We put our mixes out there, and that got us, in the like late 90s, early 2000s, like people were listening to us all over the world, which was unheard of before then, unless you had a record distribution deals, which then got us gigs, which the music industry eventually went to. But I don't know what the analogous thing there, like musicians can go perform live. What does an artist do? I mean, are they gonna, everyone's gonna become like that sidewalk uh artist that's
Banksy.
creating paintings, or what's the analogous piece to that, on that?
That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. Like it's we've talked about kind of like some profit sharing things, thoughts about that, and like as we were talking, I was also just thinking about some of like even software, mostly software, I guess, where it's like, oh, it's free to whatever the license, it's free to use, but like not for like commercial use. Basically, it's like if you're using this to make money directly from it, then like you owe me money, And I like the it's not like really freemium. It's like what is the model? Like basically donations, Like people's like, hey, it's free to use. You can use it in commercial, but if you are like, hey, throw me some money, So like, it's like, okay, yeah, I like that approach. Like I tried to be ethical. I'm like, okay, we're using this. Like here's like $50 for it. I could easily get away with like not doing that. And I think if in an ideal world, if everybody got to that place, or there was some way of when this was Mickey Mouse or somebody's creative artwork was used to do that, and somebody made money, like that, they're getting something from it, you know. Um, but
Yeah.
ultimately, I think which we're seeing a lot with like the election right now. I know Trump has gotten some Taylor Swift issues, like I think is suing him. Beyonce sent a cease and desist. You know, I don't think it's her right to decide. If I mean, or her labels or whatever. Um, if she has a label, it's to decide whether they actually want to like kind of follow up on pressing charges or suits or whatever. It's like, hey, no, I like them. I like how they did it. It was tasteful. They gave me credit for it. They, like, yeah, I'm fine with that. But it's like I don't like what that person stands for. I don't like the product. I don't like the position they put it in, because people will think that I it's me, like that I believe those same things potentially. So it's all about credit, and it's going to be really hard to like keep up on it for sure.
Well, and then too, I mean, I think technology, well, while you may, a lot of people have problems with Spotify and the centralization of it, Apple made it easier to download something and pay for music on iTunes, which then really, that was the big thing that kind of made it easier. I mean, there were people that would pirate movies, but as soon as streaming services made that easier to just stream it, it kind of disincentivizes people to want to download that. But on the flip side, we've all seen the artists that oh, I had this many streams and I got like $10, right? So but then you know once again, you talked about there's things like Patreon, but I think technology is really going to help on this too, because there was a startup that just a few days ago raised $80 million called the Story Protocol, which I'm going to be digging deeply into this weekend. But basically, this is the problem that they're trying to solve, which is um, it's a new protocol that basically IP owners can put their IP on the blockchain to then give anything that's generated from that IP, give both attribution and monetary benefits back to the original IP owner. And when you kind of go to their websites, they're just getting started. It looks like they do have some API documentation on how to use this. But I think this is, I've been talking about this for quite a while, but I think this is a great use case on how technology and in particular the blockchain can be used to solve this. And I think it solves two things. One, it helps artists be able to put it on a model or on a blockchain and get paid. But if you also have the blockchain, what's been generated from it, you can also go backwards. So you can actually trust that this is actually coming from Beyonce or coming from Taylor Swift and not coming from, Trump's Twitter account. That this is the actual originality and where it was originated from. So I'm really excited to dig deep into this protocol.
You bring up a really interesting point there in terms of like the other way attribution works. It's not only about making sure people that are the original content creators paid or get recognition. It's about like looking at something that's real, you know. And even before we started the whole like this whole new wave of AI, we had like AI videos. Everybody was going crazy. Like, is that Barack Obama saying that? Like, how do we know, right? Nowadays, it's getting so real, so good that you cannot tell just by looking at it. So we're definitely gonna need something that we can use. That looks very interesting. Story, sorry, what was the name? Storyblock
No.
It's a story protocol. It's like
product.
story.foundation. It's where it's located at. Yeah, it's the story protocol. But the other thing that was very interesting about this too, which kind of, I mean, I completely believe in this technology, and I believe that I I love this concept. One thing that was really stood out to me is the fact that they're just a protocol, and it valued the company at $2.25 billion. I mean, this just showcase. I mean, Andreessen Horowitz has been known for pumping the values of startups historically. um, this could be another bubble. It could be another, I don't know, but I thought that was very interesting too. That a company that literally just has a protocol, no product, no business that I could see of at this point, worth $2.25 billion.
That's
It's
crazy.
crazy.
That's very crazy. I wonder what if there's like a tipping point for
But
this.
it has to be.
Like, how many people they need to have using this protocol? How widespread of like all the traffic or requests or whatever needs to be that this makes sense. Because like you could have the best thing, but if like 0.5% of requests are actually using it, then it's like that means there's like 99.5% that aren't. So I don't think it's at the necessarily at the 50% mark, but I'm just be curious to see like why what happens if somebody doesn't use this. Like is there um, any sort of like recourse for that or blowback legally or public shunning or whatever it might be.
Well, I think it goes back to like I mean, my theory on this is that one, if you're an artist, whether it's this blockchain, whether it's other derivative blockchains, I mean, are you going to really you know I think there has to be some licensing rights on that. I think the laws need to catch up, saying that like, okay, there has to be some attribution back to the original, and not just for payment forward, but also, like I said, trusting it, right? Yeah, okay, you could have it on here, but are you going to trust that it's actually from the artist that you like, and it's not some guy in his basement that's creating this? I think that's the biggest piece, is that Because one of the things that's really always been challenging is why I never got into a blockchain company. Love blockchain, think it's going to be a future, but I could never see how it gets to scale, right? Like you said, if only 0.5% of artists are using this, or only apps are just saying, no, we're just gonna like, Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it is just like, nah, screw that. We're just gonna still just do Deadpool and Mickey. What does that do if there's not laws to say you can't do that? But now you get into free speech. Now you get into a lot of different,
You get into the blue bubble
you know,
of a closed ecosystem, or an ecosystem that not everybody wants to join. So does this mean NFTs are going to make their comeback?
I think so. I mean, like it's funny when they were out there. It's like, why do I need to know what the original, JPEG or what the original picture was? I'm like, well, now you do, right? And who it was created by. You actually do need to know what that digital footprint is.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, it could be a big resurgent for NFTs, and it won't just be bored monkeys anymore. It'll be an actual use case for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always been a problem. I think, especially in like music and potentially even art. Like, how do you prove that it's yours? Like, the original is your idea, and that not just an idea. You actually have to, like, in those worlds, I think you actually have to like have some physical proof of some sort. But like, let's say I'm an artist and I'm like at a, like, not an event, but like, I don't know, let's say I'm a painter and I'm like at a class where there are like 5 of us painting, and like I'm painting this amazing thing and somebody behind me like takes a picture of it and like kicks this off and it's like, oh yeah, this is mine. Like, I did this. I look like I'm the first person to do that. Like, how do I, as who actually painted it, fight that? If I don't have a picture, it's like, I don't have a picture of me painting it. Nobody else is there. It's like, tracking down like the original image is not something, especially with the cloud, people really have. And a lot of it's easy to fake, relatively easy to fake if you wanted to for those things. So I don't know. It's a tough topic anyway.
No, it's a good point.
So, yeah.
Like, how do you, like, all the IP that's out there now, how do you now claim ownership? Like, who claims block one, right, of Mickey Mouse, right? Like, that's an easy one. You can use current law, but like, you're right. Like, is there going to be a mad rush to now say grab as is there going to be a mad rush to just grab all the digital content to put it on these blockchains to then get derivative art? And then how do you actually, no, that's not theirs. This is mine.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's also super hard, right? Like, say I want to go through all the correct legal ways to get a derivative artwork. Yeah, actually, when I come out with a movie from Disney and Deadpool, right? Like, just the legal cumbersome and money spent to do that, like, that's crazy. Something like this would allow people to do that, create new derivative artwork without, and at the same time, kind of contributing back really quickly, really easy, without me having to worry, go come up with my new art, put it on the network, it's all connected. If somebody looks at it, buys it, it's gonna go back to the original person.
What it takes is like,
I feel like
like I was saying, back to like the donation kind of model. This takes, and it's the hardest part, is to get enough people to respect the artist or the originator of whatever type of work it is. I mean, it's the hardest part. It's like, even if there's no legal part, just emailing somebody, be like, hey, I found this. Can I put it on there? Can I use it? Maybe it's like some like HOA in the middle of America somewhere who wants to like found some image and like wants to put it on their flyer. Like, the person would never even have known about it, the original artist. But what happens if that artist lived in that community just by chance and sees it? It's like they would probably be like, why are you putting my work on this HOA flyer? Now it becomes potentially a bigger deal for them. So most people have been spoiled on the internet for so long that it's like they don't even know where to start, including myself. How do I even know who did this originally?
Yeah. It I think it just you have to make it easy. Like for instance, like I hate like on YouTube, their music, is so, I've had a, I want to do a music video that like kind of remixes a song, or I want to put up a DJ mix. That was one of the very first things with Beats Me is to be able to allow people to put up DJ mixes where the DJ would get part of the, streaming costs or part of the profit, which, but then however long you use the original songs would also go back to the original artist. I think there's something there because I think with all this AI, with all of this, generative art, that I think we're going to have a creativity explosion. But, for that novel, because AI still can't really create novel art. It's all derivatives of what it's been trained off of. So I think, but that doesn't mean that the derivatives aren't art as well. Who's to say? I mean, art's always been in the eye of the beholder.
Isn't all art derivative?
Yeah,
My
yeah.
point of view, it's been like that forever, and that's why I kind of always try to think about the value. Where are we putting the value? The effort and technique of being able to do a painting with your hand, being able to do Photoshop, or the ideas, the creativity, coming up with something that's new. Because even if you're using AI, you prompted it something that wasn't there. So I would like to, yes, it's very important to give attribution to people that created the original art. I think we also need to find like what is this new value and how do we measure that? People that maybe don't have all the skills, but they were able to create something with this boom. I'm interested in seeing that as well. They call it out like it's gonna be people will stop producing IP because of this, kind of like discouraging. I don't think so. Definitely, we're gonna have to figure out like how do we then revalue IPs. I think.
I mean, they said that with Napster, right? This is going to kill, like, no one's going to want to become a musician anymore. There are more musicians out there and more music than ever before. And I have so many friends that make a living off of music that could have never had done this pre-internet, pre-streaming. They would have never been able to make a living like they do now. And I'm not talking about like superstar DJs or anything, just like your normal, like, regular musician who's, making a decent living, but being able to do what they love, to a niche audience. I mean, I think that this is only going, I mean, you're right. People are always going to want to create new things. I think just the tools that we use is going to change.
And we're gonna get
So,
a lot more new niche. That's for sure. I think that we're gonna
yeah.
see a lot of new, very very specific niche for people that are like, who even thinks about that? Awesome. Looks like 1,000 persons look like they like that.
That should be the
It's gonna be
subtext of
awesome.
the internet. Who even thinks of that? um, So, and we'll end on this. So, one of the other things that was released this week was Deloitte, which is if you don't know Deloitte is a very large consulting firm, and they put out a report just a couple days ago on the state of generative AI. And there are some really cool and interesting things that um, it goes over about AI adoption in the enterprise, and in particular by different industries. And some key takeaways on this is that one, this first one, moving from potential to performance. And one of the things that we saw on this was that one, more than 40% of respondents said their companies are struggling to define and measure the exact inputs or impacts of their generative AI initiatives, meaning they're not going in with clear KPIs. They're not actually able to say, is this helping or hurting my business? I mean, we've worked with enterprises for close to 20 years. I mean, this is nothing new, like creating actual measurable goals before you start a project. Um, but one of the things that I saw in this was that 67% of organizations said that they were increasing investments in generative AI given the strong value seen to date. So that may seem kind of contradictory, but what I kind of gathered from this report is that, in those last 2 years, enterprise businesses have kind of been in the tinkering and the POC phase, right? They've been in like, hey, where is this going to help us? And over 2/3 of organizations said that they're going to start increasing their investments because they actually have seen um, uses. And some of the top benefits that have been pointed out are, number one, improved efficiency and productivity. That's kind of like, you know, step one, right? Can I, create these blog posts much more effectively? We just, went over Cursor today, how that's going to help with, productivity and coding. The second one was encourage innovation, which I thought was interesting. So it's actually, by bringing this in, it's actually encouraging. And we've seen this when we bring this into businesses, in generative AI is, people start, they've seen ChatGPT, they've maybe used it once or twice, but when they start seeing it in their own business, people's ideas start really flowing. They're like, oh, can we use it for this? Can we use it for this? Can we use it for that? And I thought that was really interesting to see that 12% saw just encouraging innovation in their their companies. Improved existing products and services at 10%. So it's, they're actually putting it into current products. We see this all over. Look at my AI tool. Look at, oh, you now have this AI feature. We see this rolling out. Some of them are useful. Most of them are not. Another one that I thought was interesting was reduce costs, because we all know that uh, generative AI is expensive, more expensive than any other technologies that people are going to roll it out. So I'm interested to see where those reduced costs are coming from. Is this less headcount? Is this needing to hire less people? Because I don't think it's in software costs if they're really, really using this.
I'm wondering if that's like
But yeah,
net versus gross. Like, um, you know, like maybe I'm overthinking it, but it's like, okay, well, if I'm like 1.5 times as productive, you know, like, and I had before I had to hire a half a person, for half time, like, then I guess it is technically reducing my potential costs for the value that or the production that I'm getting out of it. But they're probably not thinking of it that way.
what Yeah, it would be interesting to see in that, like, what they mean by reduce costs, because there are different ways. So, for instance, I mean, a way to reduce costs is, we showed on Cursor, um, being able to just, quickly do, updates. We all know if you're an engineer, there's no shortage of tech debt that needs to be solved, right? So, if you're solving your tech debt, making maybe that's reduced costs in both, more efficiency in how your code runs. It could be more efficiency in how you ship code. But I think that was interesting as well. Some of the other ones were enhanced relationships with customers and clients. So we see this a
I like
lot
that
with
one.
customer support, like just being able to have that first level of support, being able to have that one on one conversation. I was just on hold with my insurance company for like 30 minutes listening to, your call is very important to us. Like, imagine calling your insurance company. It's like, hi, Brad, what can I help you with? You'd be like, wait, what? There's no number system that I have to go through. There's no nothing. It's just like, oh, okay, I tell you what my challenge is, or what I'm calling in about, and you might actually be able to solve it. That's a huge win. Huge win.
I think it's gonna go even further than that. We are kind of in that era of the chatbots of how we access information, but very soon, and we see this with Cursor, we're going to the next step, which is like, I'm gonna predict what you want. I'm gonna predict your next action. The
Hmm.
insurance company is going to call you because they noticed something different on your data. I want to get too ahead of it, but just check out the cursor how they predict tabs. They know when your next line you're gonna update.
Yeah, predictive, and also too. Oh, did you think about this? Right. I mean, just like, hey, you needed to change it over here, but you also need to change these things over here. I think that's going to be a big piece. Another one that I saw on here was shifted workers. I was surprised to see this really as low as it was shifted workers from lower to higher value tasks. I mean, we've seen this, internally where, instead of, first level support sitting there answering, being reactive is actually now being able to say, okay, now let's be able to work on our source data. Now let's actually work on that documentation that we've always put off, or or write those tests that we've wanted to do. Like, now that those things are taken care of, like, what are those higher level tasks? What are those things that we have always wanted to do? No company is no team is short of ideas. They're just short of time and resources. So I thought that was, I was surprised to see that as low as it was.
Yeah, I'm surprised this is even in here, and I love that it's here because it's a great argument to go back to people that say like, "Oh, AI is gonna steal my job," and I'm always like, "No, it's gonna make you better." Think about it. Like now you can do things that you didn't know how to do. And we've seen this in our team for sure. Like teammates that have been doing support, that was like they couldn't code the solutions, or they wouldn't be able to dedicate the time towards learning that because they had so much other things to do. Now because it frees up time, it's improve their efficiency and other things. They're able to like play around and start fixing things. And we've seen pull requests from some people that we wouldn't expect, and now they're pushing code to production in
Yeah.
order that.
Yeah, I mean, people. Yeah, we have first level support. Now shipping code, which is just amazing to see because they're learning, they're trying new things out, and they feel empowered to be able to do that sort of stuff. It's been really cool to see
Our
that.
PR reviews, they're using AI to do a PR review that they normally wouldn't even have been asked to be on. So I'm just like, yeah, let's see what it says. But I mean, it's cutting and pasting and putting it back, but I'm hoping that they absorb it. And at this point, the feedback is solid. So I'm glad to see them like trying it out. They're getting more into code from that perspective too. Um, it doesn't hurt anything. They can be totally wrong, and like it's okay. Like, the dev can say,
Yeah,
explain to them like why it was wrong, and they're learning. So I love seeing that stuff.
and and expanding the, like, I was, I've never been a front end person. I've always been, back end scripts, doing like, more, move this data from this data. My programming's been, I've been pretty much a script monkey my entire career, right? In the coding that I do, but now I'm able to like actually, you know, create front end React components that are actually styled, that don't look like crap, and get a code review so that when, Adam goes and reviews it, it also still does say, and actually makes the code reviews easier, because some of the reviews that you gave me on my code was like, hey, you should do this. And I was like, why is he telling me to do that? And I'd put it in there, and the cursor would be like, he's right. You should be doing that. That's a good suggestion.
Sure
And
was.
this is why. And it helped me to it helped explain your thought, like why it was, right? So you just had like a little comment, oh, you should do this because, do it this way. Why? Right? Like, why should I do that? And it kind of was uh, that helped me to understand why that was a suggestion, instead of just like, okay, I'll do it this way now, right? So I think that was pretty cool. They give a breakdown too of the different generative AI use cases delivering real world value by industry. So in banking, customer service tool that handles messages using both chat and voice. JP Morgan just actually rolled out their own customer support or AI bot this past week. We've seen that. Customer support and transportation support tools. Are we seeing a trend here? Customer support. Um, this is interesting. An internal medical claims appeal review tool that basically that provides increased response quality and decreased time to respond. So basically, uh, being able to, if you've ever had to deal with your insurance, oh, I'm, want to, your insurance, I know, Max, you don't have to worry about this, but in the States where our healthcare system sucks, the insurance will just deny it half the time. And they make it so hard for you to appeal that process. Now, are they making this so that are they closing the loop so that it's making it even harder to appeal the process, or are they making it easier for people to go through the appeals process? That's that's the
Just
question
one
I'd be
prompt
looking.
It
away.
depends on what.
That's just one word in a prompt that changes it all.
Right, exactly. So that might be interesting to look into, like what they're trying to do with that. Um, Consumer. So consumer segmentation tools. This really has been a big piece on this. Like, how do you actually, personalize your messaging, personalize your product delivery, right? So it used to be only Amazon and the big players that could deliver the type of personalization. That's why they're trillion-dollar companies. But these tools are now going to your local flower shop to be able to, do these kind of personalization. Um, I thought this was really cool using continuous improvement in technology for taking feedback, customer feedback. So those, you know, will you, use my product, right? Like we all seen those. How likely are you to use my product and all that? Using that to actually inform the roadmaps and probably their support tickets as well. We've seen that in the clients that we support is being able to now analyze like, hey, give me all my past Jira tickets. What are some common issues that we could actually now focus on that would actually decrease the amount of support tickets that we get for our technology companies? Um, yeah, I thought this was really cool to see the different use cases. But I did see, customer support being one of the main use cases across a lot of different industries.
So it's funny you mentioned banking. Uh, one of my one of my friends is in banking. I won't give too many details about her, but um, she said that the level of fraud with AI has been like through the roof, and people from deep fakes, basically of like voice, people getting calls from like what sounds like their kid. It's like, hey, I got arrested. They said you need to like send money here, but it's like in the voice of their child because like they've, or things like that. It's more than just like getting a letter or an email from the prince of whatever country, asking for stuff. It's like very personalized. As I'm reconnecting, but yeah, super personalized, and it's like a huge deal. So basically, anytime that this happens, like they're asking for people to basically call in and verify everything.
Yeah, me and my mom actually, me and her, I'm not going to say it, but we have a code word. Like, if you really need something from me, say this code word
What's that code word?
that only we know
What is it?
because you're right.
I
Not
bet it's your
saying.
mother.
Maybe that's it. Not saying. No, but I highly recommend. This is a big tip that I would recommend to anyone watching this is to any of your loved ones come up with some code word that you only know because this. You're right. I mean, just from this podcast alone, someone could come in and clone my voice, find out who my mom is, and call her and try to scam her. Like that's a big problem from that. So yeah, pro tip: get a code word, get a safe word.
Safe word is safe word.
um, so this is one other thing too, is like, what are the behaviors driving the most value for the generative AI initiatives? And The top one is deeply embedding generative AI into the functions and processes. And I think this is truly where you're going to see the most value out of it. It's not just, oh, we got a ChatGPT subscription, or, we got this, we're using, Canva AI. It's actually putting it into your workflows and making it so that it's deeply integrated, so that it's not necessarily your employees using AI. We all know that technology shift and technology training is a challenge. But if your IT team can actually just deeply embed it so that it's just happening in the background. Good example of this is all of our Jira tickets, all of our Zoom meetings, all of our Slack message threads, everything is being centralized into a different place that's being summarized. So instead of, our employees having to go in and say, use ChatGPT, take that transcript, they can literally go to dashboards of summarized, meetings, summarize like what was my week like last week, right? So when we have our weekly stand up, having those, just that list right there. They don't have to go and ask ChatGPT. They don't have to go and curate that. It's been so deeply ingrained into our processes internally that it just works. So if you're looking to get AI into your business, start thinking about the processes and the workflows and how you can do it without trying to have to train new people to do it. So I thought that was really interesting to see at the top.
Yeah, I'd love to see this data next to the
Um,
one before it, uh, that had like the what value they're actually getting out of it right now, to see like if we can kind of match up a little bit of like what would change and what it's done so far. Budget, like, oh, there's enough budget. Obviously, you can do more with that. But just to kind of like try to track it down
yeah,
to like, okay, for this particular industry, you know, this is the value that they're getting right now, and like they need more of this. I need to be able to customize it more. You know, hire better
yeah.
people.
Hiring the best talent, that was a behavior driving the generative AI. This is going to be like, I mean, yeah, there's that saying that says people that use AI will replace people that don't use AI. Just like companies that use AI will replace companies that don't use AI. And if you're not using the latest and greatest tools and not really digging, diving into this and understanding this technology, you're going to start losing on the talent pool too, because people are going to start demanding it. It's going to be like, coming in, 20 years ago and being like, oh, we don't use word processors. Here's your typewriter. Wait, what? Right? Like, no, I'm going to go to, I like my MS Word, right? I'm not going to go work at a place that's still using a typewriter. You're going to see that exact same cycle happen, with hiring and driving that in there. This was also another really, really good piece, which was, uh, a majority of organizations have deployed less than a third of their generative AI experiments into production. Now, a lot of people watching that would say that's a failure. I completely think it's the other way. I was at a conference recently, and one of the people on stage said that they had launched over 80 different chatbots and AI applications. Only like, I think he said like eight of them had made it into production and actually being used at scale. But those eight paid like dividend, like almost like 10, 20x over the productivity, over what those actual AI workflows actually gave them. So I think experimentation is really key here. You have to be open to failure. I mean, even our own internal, it sounds great in your head, Brad, but then when you put it into practice, it's like no one uses it. It didn't drive the value that you really thought that it would. The data wasn't organized the way that we need it to be. So I think that this is a, you're going to see this trend if you start really saying, okay, we're gonna have an AI team, we're going to start deploying some of these things. Be prepared that most of your experiments, and that's what they are at this point, are experiments, will not work. They will not be productive. Um, but it's about how do you get to that, and it goes back to the original thing. What are the KPIs you're measuring it against? So making sure you're having clear metrics of what you're actually trying to solve, not just, oh, I want this to poop something out. It's like, okay, well, what is the use case you're actually trying to solve for this, right? What are is it a business process? Is it having those clearly defined is going to help you to understand if it's working or not sooner rather than later. But you will fail most of the time. Um, yeah. So one of the things that was actually a key, yeah. So do organizations think they are ready? So basically, this is the percentage of organizations that are highly prepared or say they're highly prepared for Gen AI across the following. They say that their technology infrastructure only 45%, so less than half feel that their technology infrastructures are up for the job. Data management, you'll see this later in the next one. I mean, data governance and data management has been just a challenge ever since the internet and we went digital to begin with. This is only just making this problem even more of a bigger problem. 37% feel they don't even have the right strategy. Or only 37% believe they have a strategy. That means 63% don't have a strategy. They don't know what to use it for. They don't have the use cases. So this is where, you know, teams can come in and really help you to really think about, what are the ways that you could use, because every team, I mean, which is just surprising to me, because I mean, I have the exact opposite problem. I have a problem of focus, right? There's too many things I want to be able to do with it. That could be a lack of strategy too. It could be considered that, but coming up with a strategy and how you're going to roll it out. And this is really key. 20% believe that they have the talent required to have a successful generative AI rollout, meaning their team is just not, trained. It's not up to the task. They don't have the right, and this makes sense because there's only a handful of people in the world that really, comparatively, that really know how this technology works deeply.
I guess the question for me is like, from me, I should say, is you don't need somebody to necessarily, you know, create their own model and build a competitor here. Like, because the talent is could be as much of like combining this with strategy. It's like, okay, how can we use this to make our support team better? So that's going to be a skill. Somebody's going to be able to come in and be able to like understand what a team needs to be productive and successful, and also know how to use AI and tools in order to support that, or to make them more productive so that the company can scale, or train those people to understand strategy better so they can like up level themselves, like what we were talking about earlier. So like, I really wish I could ask some follow up questions on some of these things. I don't think there's a full report anywhere, but
This is the full PDF report.
there's not like any like raw. Not that, this isn't the summary, but so yeah, like I'm curious, like what talent.
There might be the raw, yeah.
Because the question is pretty broad, so
Well,
like they're obviously grouping these in. But it's like, okay, do you mean like talent to build something, or do you mean talent to use it, or to plan for your people to use it? So that might, my opinion, back to the experiments, that's where people kind of fall short. It's like, oh yeah, this is great for me. And it's okay, well, I'm trying to roll this out to 100 people on the team, like on a single team at this company. Like maybe it's not good for them, and like I don't know how to do that, necessarily. So like, who do you need to help them? We talk about this a lot with Answer AI. Like what are the use cases, to get people to get to this place where they can come up with their own personal strategies or strategies for their team, and so that they can get things into production.
And I think it's a misconception of what the talent is needed too, because they hear AI like, oh, I need to get a machine learning engineer. I need to get, an AI researcher on my team. And I'm like, actually, you need a good, Python or JavaScript developer that just has that hacker mentality, that growth mentality, the experimentation mentality. Hey, what happens when I hook this up to this and see what this, these APIs do when you run it through an AI, right? It's not necessarily you need to know um, the underlying technology because only you don't need to be training your own models at this point. You could fine tune them, and there's plenty of stuff on there. But just the talent to just think, what is that strategy? What if we hook this up to this up, right? Let's see what happens. Like those are the types of people you should be looking for. Is not necessarily you don't need a machine learning researcher unless you are training your own models, which, to be honest, once again, you don't really need to be, at least at this point, training your own models to get value out of it. You want to go to like the nirvana level of like there, yeah, you're going to need to, start training and fine tuning your own stuff. But to just start getting POCs off the ground and to show value that you should start investing in it, find those hackers, find those, curious people in your team, and, give them just that time to just hack away.
Yeah, I pretty strongly agree on the strategy piece too. Like, I just don't think a lot of people know what they would even use it for still, or how to roll it out. Like, it sounds like more and more people are, but that's going to be a skill in itself to like really break this down and say, okay, here's the tools I have. So if you think of it like a person in a way with a specific skill set, how would you use that person? Here when they can't necessarily talk to somebody or do too much thinking for themselves, but it is a way of like getting data or like supporting people. So like you're gonna see the structures of like support teams and things change. Like they already are, but like it's gonna be like really obvious to people. But the people who are planning that out, it's more than just the technology of it. It's that piece. I think that it's just a skill that people have, and a lot of older generation, like upper management, let's say, probably are going to need to get on board with this pretty quickly, or they're going to get left behind by some like 23-year-old who did play around with it, understands it, but understands the business side of things enough to be like, hey, I can like make a big change here. That's you're going to be leading the way. Just a quick anecdote, like of something I read, a story on Reddit. This guy basically said, he's like, I think I messed up like by falsifying or embellishing on my resume. And so he like worked for a small company, and it was like a 2-person company or something like that. But he got the VP title even though he was like 19 years old and making minimum wage. And he took that and went and got another job where he was like a regional director or some, whatever the order was. But he definitely on his resume looked like he was better than he was. And so he went in and got a job at a company he didn't name. He's like, I got in there. He's like, I tried to fake it till I could make it, but like they needed me to actually implement the things that I was talking about, not just like regurgitate it from like what I got from ChatGPT or like the experience I had or doing research. So like he killed the interview because they said, what do you want to do? And he's like, here you go. And then they're like, great. And this first week they're like, all right, get it going. And he was just like, I don't know. So like, and he was like super, transparent. He's just like, yeah, I just realized I don't have that skill set yet. I am like, batting above my range or whatever saying. And I think that's what's happening here is like people don't know what to do even necessarily or how to implement it. And then there's people who are just being more conservative. So those use cases are what is actually going to drive the value for the majority of businesses out there, whether they're large or small. And that's going to be a huge skill set. And I'm sure if not already, there's, like college or high school classes It should have people thinking about it from that perspective, not just the technology side, but how is this going to help us, and like what ideas do you have, to roll this out, create a business model out of it or a business plan for Cisco or whatever company out there. So
Yeah.
I'll get my kids on it.
One of the other things that on the key findings was, I love this quote right here, that it says, there's a whole series of questions Gen AI is triggering about data strategy that in the past were far less important, right? Like, oh, it's just data, it's being stored in the cloud, right? They just didn't really have a data strategy. He said, I think we're probably spending as much time on data strategy and management as on pure Gen AI questions, because data is the foundation of Gen AI work. And I mean, every single meeting that I go into, consulting, strategy, I feel like it's like, everyone wants to talk about remodeling their house. Oh, it's going to look great when I have these curtains up here and the paint this. I'm like, yeah, but your foundation is like crumbling, or there isn't a foundation there at all. We need to focus on that piece first. And nobody wants to talk about the boring piece of data management. And the concern around it was around, like, what is the concerns around data management? It's like using sensitive data and models. There's almost a 58% in that. Data privacy, um, and really, like, using your own proprietary data and models, like, there's a less concerns. That's kind of that's interesting. I don't know what they consider sensitive data versus proprietary data.
PII.
Maybe like PII or something like that. Yeah. So, people are starting to think about their data, and it's just not been something that uh, people have really thought about. And this has gone through, like, every single project that we do is like, great, what are your use cases, right? Start there. Great. Okay, what data is going to actually supply those use cases? Oh, it's all in my support. Like, I want to make my support chatbot better. Great. Let's look at your support tickets. Not the, yes, the help center and that documentation is key, but what's even more key? The support tickets, because that's where people are getting stuck. That's where people are submitting their problems. If that's the problem you want to solve, let's tag and label that stuff, right? So this has been a big challenge, to just because nobody wants to talk about data. They want to talk about the sexy new Gen AI, thing that they can do with it. They don't want to sit there and have meetings about data taxonomy and how we label it and how we structure it. Like, that's just not the sexy part of AI, but it's kind of key. It's not kind of, it is
I wonder if
key.
I wonder if that's where like the talent is not ready for this type of Gen AI era comes from. Yeah, when you're talking from support, even bringing up the tickets and other areas you want to create or replace a position, do you even have the processes documented to create an AI that could replicate that? Many companies, the roles are just like, oh yeah, that's Joe. Joe knows what to do. He's been in that role for 20 years. So how do we make another Joe? First we need to ask him to like put everything into a document, something that doesn't get done as much as it should. But now it's become crucial. Definition of roles, definition of what is the process that you're fulfilling becomes so much important because you're now able to replicate that. And
I think that goes to company culture. Because, like, I've always been with our own company culture, like, whether you're starting something, like running it locally, whether you're setting up the new clients, right? All the things that go into that, like, create a checklist. The next time, go through that checklist. Don't just do it from your memory. Do that make the checklist better each time. And when Gen AI came out, we had those checklists. We had those things that people have done so that you can automate it. I think too many people rush to automate before just doing it manually to see if that is actually the process that you want to automate. Elon Musk just had it in the Lex Friedman podcast where he talked about where he did it the opposite way. He would automate, then go back, and then just like basically have to like just remove something completely. Like nothing sucks more than taking something you've automated and removing it from the system completely. Like us as engineers, we want to just focus instead of just like, is this actually needed? Is this process needed? Is this thing needed? Um, but yeah, having that documented, having that is very, very key. Um, so yeah, so there's a lot of different. There's something else in here about maintaining momentum by measuring value. So like, how are you actually going to get value, and how are you going to actually do it? So basically, number one, use specific KPIs for evaluating Gen AI's performance. Goes back. You got to start with, what are you trying to actually accomplish? Are you trying to, and I had a podcast the other day with Monica Derry where she talks about, don't talk about what it can do, let's talk about what it can't do or what it shouldn't do, right? Let's make those as a KPI. Your legal team says it shouldn't be able to do that, let's focus on that. We all know it can output content, we've all seen it, we're all over that wow stage. Let's focus on like what it can't do, and what are those metrics you're trying to do. They built a framework for evaluating the Gen AI investments. So this kind of goes into how those how are we going to roll it out, right? From idea to then evaluating it. When are we going to evaluate it? What are the KPIs that we're measuring it on? How do we define success versus failure? Because once again, most of your automations, most of your workflows are not going to work. This is an experimentation. We're just at the beginning stages of this to find out what is even the things that should be automated versus not. Not everything can be automated, contrary to what I sometimes wish, but that's the reality of it, at least right now. They track changes in employee productivity. This is another thing. I think it's hard to sometimes track that. It really depends on the role. Like, is it number of pull requests, or code shipped? Is it um, you know how you track employee productivity has always been a challenge to begin with. Um, like, because some employees can be productive without necessarily doing what some of those key metrics are, right? Like, they're valuable to the company because of X, Y, and Z, not necessarily because of how much code they shipped, those types of things. Um, but yeah, having, you definitely want to have something in there to be able to keep that momentum going. Because especially with, when you're a VP or an executive and you're seeing, okay, that failed, that failed, that failed. You have to have some sort of like motivation to want to keep investing in this, this technology, to find out what actually is going to help for you. So, anything else on that? I think that's it.
Yeah, that was super interesting. Now I was going to show you the AI Australian breakdancer. It's like Raycon or Raygun. I can try to share it if you guys want to see it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so we'll end it on some AI funny videos.
The other one's really good too, but you kind of have to see it. Like, I don't know.
Cursed.
Yeah, I think it's just the frame rate isn't there, but the other one's really funny. It's these two guys basically recreated like a generated video. And so like they're doing like the whole thing and they're like, you know, overreacting, and like their arms, they kind of like keep on moving in one direction towards the, you know, after like trying to hit somebody.
Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, yeah. I think until next time, it's good to have you guys back. We're back in the saddle, so we'll be back next Friday for all the exciting news that's happening in AI. So until then, I will see you later.
Yeah, thank you.